The chandeliers above my bed shimmered like captured starlight, spilling pale gold across the marble floors of my chambers. Every crystal reflected the meticulous order I had built in this palace. Polished surfaces, arranged books, gilded ornaments, the faint scent of sandalwood lingering in the air. I should have felt at peace. I should have felt in control. Yet, tonight I sensed a disturbance before I even saw it. A ripple in the silence, subtle but insistent, like a shadow brushing against the edges of my carefully constructed world. I was accustomed to such disturbances. As Crown Prince, my life was a series of rehearsed gestures, polite bows, calculated words, a rigid routine designed to impress the court and conceal every vulnerability. Discipline was my ally, and fear my weapon. People admired me, yes, but they also trembled. They should. Power is not given. It is taken, refined, and defended with precision. And yet, the faintest sound, a soft scrape of silk against stone, made my pulse quicken. My hand moved almost instinctively to the hilt of my dagger, though I did not yet know what I would find. Shadows shifted at the edges of my vision, the chandelier light catching a glint of something metallic, something alive. "Show yourself," I commanded, voice low but firm, carrying the weight of authority that had silenced ministers and guards alike. A laugh answered me, but mocking. It reverberated off the marble walls and froze me in place for a heartbeat longer than I cared to admit. The sound was human, yet intoxicatingly dangerous, a melody of challenge that made the rigid discipline in my chest quiver. I stepped forward, careful, measured. My boots clicked against the floor, a deliberate rhythm meant to warn. "This is your only warning," I said. "Reveal yourself or I will find you." From the corner of my eye, a figure emerged, masked, lithe, and impossibly graceful. Black as midnight, moving like smoke, the intruder wore shadows as a cloak. My mind raced, assessing every detail. The way he carried himself with reckless confidence, the subtle way his hands flexed in readiness, the bold tilt of his head that dared me to act. "Ah, the great Crown Prince Aeryn," the thief said, voice silk and steel. "So serious. So rigid. I wondered if you ever smiled." I swallowed, irritation prickling at my skin. The audacity. The sheer insolence. And yet there was something magnetic. My fingers twitched at my side, but I forced them to stillness. Control. I reminded myself. Control was everything. "Who are you?" I demanded. "And how dare you enter my chambers?" The thief shrugged, as if the question amused him. "Names are irrelevant when the fun is in the chase," he said, eyes glittering beneath the mask. "You should be grateful I came to see you." Every nerve in me screamed to strike, to end this intrusion swiftly. I lunged, dagger flashing, and yet he was too fast, twisting, evading with a grace that was maddening. My hands closed around his wrist in a sudden, unexpected grip, and I yanked him toward me. He laughed again, sharp and thrilling, and in that instant, I felt a surge of something unfamiliar, a spark of exhilaration, of desire threaded with danger. His body pressed against mine, warm, defiant, almost teasing. And I, Crown Prince of the realm, disciplined and unyielding, felt my own heartbeat betray me. "Pathetic," he whispered, voice low, teasing, as if daring me to act beyond words. "Pathetic." I felt heat flare in my chest, something dark and dangerous. This wasn't mere theft. This was a challenge. The threat. And worse, it was irresistible. Without thinking, without reason, I leaned in, capturing his lips with mine. A kiss meant to dominate, to silence, to claim authority, but it backfired spectacularly. Shock and thrill collided, igniting a fire neither of us could contain. His lips were soft, mocking, and for a brief, dizzying moment, the palace walls, the chandeliers, the very order of my life seemed to vanish. He struggled, yet did not pull away. A teasing laugh escaped his throat, vibrating against mine, and I realized he was as caught in the moment as I was, even if he'd never admit it. My hands gripped him more tightly, pushing the boundaries of control, testing limits I had never known I wanted to explore. "You think you can taunt me?" I hissed, voice low, a dangerous growl that surprised even me. "Maybe I do," he breathed back, lips brushing mine again, daring, fearless. "Maybe. I just like seeing the serious prince unravel." Rage, desire, fear, thrill, all mingled in my chest, a storm I had no control over. I forced him away slightly, enough to look into his masked eyes, searching for the truth behind the audacity. "You don't understand," I said, voice trembling with authority I barely felt. "This is not a game you can win." "You win?" he interrupted with a grin I could see even beneath the mask. "Oh, Aeryn, you already lost the moment you found me." I froze, every word like a blade against my carefully maintained composure. Lost? Impossible. Yet the heat creeping along my spine whispered otherwise. My world, meticulous, controlled, cold, had begun to fracture in a single instant. I shoved him against the wall, gripping his shoulders, staring into the mask that hid half his expression. And then, for the first time in years, I allowed my mind to wander beyond duty, beyond discipline, to a place of temptation I had forbidden myself to even imagine. "You will not mock me," I said, voice low, dangerous, commanding. "Not here. Not ever." His laugh was soft, daring, and it sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. I wasn't mocking, merely observing. "You're fascinating." Terrifying, but fascinating. The words, the audacity, the heat of his gaze, they struck something deep inside me, a door I hadn't realized was locked. I wanted to close it, to slam it shut with royal authority, but my own body betrayed me. I wanted more. I wanted him. And yet I was Prince. I was bound by duty, by expectation. And then, as if sensing my hesitation, his hand brushed mine. A touch so light, so daring, yet it sent a jolt straight through my chest. My breath caught. My control slipped, ever so slightly. The moment was electric. Forbidden. Dangerous. And delicious. I straightened, my resolve returning in part, but the fire remained. "You will pay for this intrusion," I whispered, more to myself than to him. "I will teach you obedience." He smirked beneath the mask, unafraid, unrepentant. "Then, teach me," he murmured, voice soft but bold. "Or perhaps, I'll teach you instead." A chill of anticipation ran through me, mingled with the heat of desire. The spark had been struck. I did not know whether I would regret it, or if it would consume me entirely. But one thing was certain, my world of control, discipline, and rigid duty had begun to crack, and the thief before me, daring, irreverent, and impossibly tempting, was the reason. And in the quiet aftermath of our first clash, beneath the glittering chandeliers of the palace, I realized something I had never admitted, not even to myself. I wanted him. Wanted him badly. And that realization terrified me more than any sword, any rebellion, or any enemy in the kingdom. The first night of his intrusion should have been the end of it. The thief, masked and mocking, should have been chased from my chambers, flung into the dungeons, or left trembling in fear at the edges of the palace. Yet here he was, days later, appearing with an audacity that made my pulse hammer and my control teeter on the edge of collapse. I had thought I could maintain the rules, the distance, the cold precision that defined me. And yet, from the moment he returned, slipping past guards with a grace that bordered on magical, I realized control was no longer mine to claim. Every encounter with him became a battle, though not the kind I was trained to fight. This was a war of glances, of touches, of words heavy with challenge and desire. "You know you shouldn't be here," I growled, voice clipped, masking the heat rising in my chest. I had caught him in the corridor outside my study, dark as midnight, his figure like liquid shadow against the candlelight. "And yet," he replied, tilting his head, his eyes gleaming beneath the mask, "I am. Seems I enjoy danger." I took a step forward, wanting to seize him, to assert dominance, but he shifted, smooth, teasing, impossible to catch. My fingers itched with the need to grasp him, to bend him to my will, yet every time I drew near, he twisted, a grin playing beneath the mask that made my blood heat unbearably. "You will not tease me," I said, sharp, but even as I spoke, I felt the tremor of desire ripple through me. I hated that he had this effect on me, this boldness, this reckless charm. My duty demanded control. My pride demanded submission. And yet, my body betrayed me. I am merely curious, he whispered, brushing past me with deliberate slowness. The scent of him, something earthy, warm, a hint of mischief, clung to the air long after he moved. It was maddening. I lunged, seizing his wrist with a strength that belied my restraint. He gasped, not with fear, but with something teasing, flirtatious, and it sent a jolt straight to my groin. Pathetic, I hissed, gripping him tighter, pressing him against the wall. You think to toy with me? I like to watch the prince unravel, he said softly, voice low and dangerous, as his body pressed against mine, teasing, inviting. And I think perhaps you like it too. I froze. My mind screamed, you are the prince. You are in control. Yet every fiber of me burned with a desire I could not deny. His words, his body, the audacity of his challenge, it intoxicated me. I had always been disciplined, always been above distraction. And now, I was drowning in it. The first night had been dangerous. The kiss I had stolen in anger and frustration had sparked something neither of us could ignore. And now, he teased that spark, fanning it with every smirk, every daring glance, every brush of his hand against mine. You think you can bend me? I demanded, voice low, fierce, trying to reclaim some semblance of authority. I pressed my forehead against his, eyes locked on the masked face that dared to defy me. I don't think, Aeryn, he murmured. I know. And I enjoy every second of it. My restraint faltered. My hand slid to the nape of his neck, gripping him in a way that was no longer about punishment. It was about claiming, about need. His body shivered beneath my touch, not from fear, but from anticipation, and the effect it had on me was devastating. The games began then, subtle and relentless. He would appear at the edge of my chambers when I was supposed to be alone, tracing his fingers along surfaces I had meticulously arranged, leaving his mark, teasing me without fully surrendering. He would whisper things, half taunts, half temptations, pressing against my body in moments that should have been forbidden, yet ignited a fire I could not douse. One night, I caught him in the library, surrounded by ancient tomes and candlelight. He had slipped past my guards with an ease that should have enraged me, yet I found myself holding back, watching him with something more complicated than anger. He leaned against a bookshelf, mask tilted slightly, eyes glinting as if daring me to act. You should be studying, I said, though the words sounded hollow in the charged silence. Not sneaking around my chambers. And you, he replied softly, stepping closer, should learn to loosen that rigid spine of yours. His hand brushed mine, light, teasing, sending a jolt of heat through me that left my knees threatening to buckle. I caught him by the shoulder, spinning him against the wall, my lips mere inches from his ear. One more move like that, I whispered, teeth grazing his skin, and I will break you. His laugh, low and dangerous, vibrated against me. I don't think you will, he murmured, voice daring, almost reverent. I think you want to. And the truth, the terrifying, intoxicating truth, was that he was right. Every battle of control, every subtle game of dominance, had eroded my discipline. I wanted him. I wanted to dominate him, to be dominated by him, to surrender in ways I had never imagined. But he was no mere opponent. With every encounter, he began to see through the masks I wore. The prince, cold and untouchable, disciplined and aloof, he glimpsed the cracks beneath the perfection. A shiver of vulnerability when he pressed too close. A quickened heartbeat I could not hide when his lips brushed my skin. A shadow of doubt, desire, and obsession in my eyes when I thought he was not watching. I hated it. I hated that he could unravel me so effortlessly. I hated that I craved it, and yet I could not resist. The nights became a cycle of chase and confrontation, of teasing and subtle seduction. I would corner him, demand obedience, only for him to twist, evade, and laugh, pushing me to the brink. And every time, I felt that edge, the line between punishment and pleasure, blurring, until I no longer knew where one ended and the other began. One evening, after a particularly fierce encounter in the ballroom, with chandeliers reflecting the tension between us like 1,000 silent witnesses, I found him cornered against the velvet curtains. I pressed close, hands gripping his wrists, lips brushing his ear as I whispered the words that had become both threat and confession. "One more moan like that," I murmured, teeth grazing his skin, "and I will ruin you." He shivered, not from fear, but from the heat of desire, the thrill of being caught between defiance and surrender. And in that moment I realized it. I was obsessed. Not merely drawn to him, not merely irritated or tempted, but consumed by the need to possess him, to dominate him, to be undone by him in equal measure. And worse, I knew he felt it too. The thrill in his eyes, the daring in his smile, the audacity of his touch, it mirrored my own obsession, our desire feeding into each other like fire and air. Control was gone. Discipline was gone. And the line between punishment and pleasure had vanished entirely. I could not sleep that night. I could not eat. I could think of nothing but him. His laughter, his teasing, the way his body had pressed against mine, and the way I had almost surrendered entirely in his arms. I was the prince, heir to the throne, trained in silence and command. And yet, he had broken me in ways that no enemy, no rebellion, and no political rival ever could. And I knew, deep in the marrow of my bones, that the game had only begun. The thief had won the first battle, not with a sword, not with cunning, but with audacity, charm, and an understanding of my weakness I had never acknowledged, not even to myself. I was his in ways I would not admit. And the thrill of that knowledge was as terrifying as it was intoxicating. The fire between us was no longer a spark, it was a blaze. And I had no idea how to contain it. The palace was quieter than usual that night, the kind of silence that presses against the bones and whispers secrets. I should have been reviewing ledgers, attending to petitions, maintaining the cold order of my life. Instead, my thoughts were consumed by him, the masked thief who had invaded not just my chambers, but the rigid walls of my mind and body. He was here again, of course. Slipping past guards, past enchanted locks and careful wards, moving through the shadows like he belonged to the darkness itself. And in a way he did. I could never control him entirely, and the thrill of that reality gnawed at me. It was maddening and intoxicating. I found him in the music room, where the moonlight poured through tall windows, painting the polished floors in silver. His mask glinted faintly, and he leaned against the piano, hands lightly tracing the keys as though teasing me. "You're late," I said, voice low, harsh, attempting to mask the tremor in my chest. I was never late, never weak. And yet, with him, I felt the weight of my own restraint slipping. "Punctuality is overrated," he replied, voice soft, honeyed, teasing. "Especially when the prince keeps you waiting in his thoughts all day." Heat flared in my chest. My breath caught. He was relentless, daring, and every word, every movement, cut through the armor I had spent my life building. I closed the distance between us in a single step, hands gripping his shoulders, pressing him against the piano. The keys jumped beneath his weight, some notes ringing out sharp and sudden. He looked up at me, eyes sparkling beneath the mask, lips curved in that maddening smirk that made me want to bite, to command, to surrender all at once. "You shouldn't be here," I growled, though my voice betrayed the desire threading through it. "You tempt me too much." "And you," he said softly, tilting his head so our foreheads nearly touched, "enjoy it more than you're willing to admit." My fingers flexed against his body, the heat of him pressing against me like fire. I could feel the tremor running through him. Not fear, exactly, but anticipation, desire, the same dangerous tension that thrummed inside me. He was challenging me, teasing me, yet submitting to me in ways that made my chest ache with both power and want. I leaned closer, teeth brushing his ear, voice low and dangerous. "One more moan like that," I whispered, each word heavy with threat and confession, "and I'll ruin you." His shiver against me was subtle, teasing, but it sent a shock straight through me. That single reaction, so fragile, so defiant, so utterly him, was enough to break every thread of control I had left. We moved together like a storm, pushing boundaries that should have been sacred. Every night became a private battlefield of lust and dominance, each encounter a negotiation of power and desire. He would test me, pressing against me in ways that made my body betray me, and I would respond with an intensity that both punished and claimed him. But beneath the teasing, beneath the audacity, I began to see the cracks in his own armor. One night, after a particularly tense encounter in the royal gardens, he leaned back against the fountain, chest rising and falling with rapid breaths. He looked at me, not with challenge, but with something raw, vulnerable, something I had never seen before. "They don't understand," he whispered, voice catching. "No one does. But lives depending on my choices. And here I am, running, always running." I paused, fingers still brushing against his arm. He was trembling, not from fear of me, but from the weight he carried alone. I realized in that moment that beneath the audacity, beneath the danger and teasing, he was human. Fragile in ways that matched my own fragility. "You're not alone," I said, voice softer than intended, almost lost in the night air. "Not anymore." His eyes flickered, a flash of disbelief, and then that defiant spark returned. "I should be. I've always been." "I said you're not," I insisted, my hands gripping him tighter, a mixture of command and protection. The intensity between us was not just lust. It was danger, it was obsession, it was the first real connection I had felt in years. And yet it terrified me. Every touch, every whispered word, every stolen kiss risked scandal, betrayal, even ruin. If the court discovered our entanglement, the repercussions would be catastrophic. And yet, I couldn't stop. I wouldn't stop. He pressed closer, daring me with his gaze, and I felt the fire ignite again, hotter, more consuming. My control, my discipline, my careful life, all threatened to crumble under the weight of desire that had been building for weeks. I wanted him, entirely, dangerously, with every fiber of my being. "You're reckless," I said, voice hoarse, teeth grazing his shoulder as I pinned him gently against the marble fountain. "You tempt me in ways I cannot control." "And you," he murmured, brushing his hand against mine, "are deliciously broken when you try." Heat flared through me, sharp and unrelenting. The audacity, the tease, the undeniable pull between us. It consumed my thoughts and body alike. I wanted to claim him, to dominate him fully, yet part of me ached to surrender, to be undone by his boldness, his fearlessness, his irrepressible spirit. We were tangled now, physically and emotionally, our encounters no longer just games. Every night, every stolen moment, every whispered word was a thread weaving us together in a tapestry of obsession. And with each thread, the stakes grew higher. A single misstep, a single witness, and everything, our reputations, our positions, our lives, could collapse. Yet, neither of us could resist. The danger, the thrill, the fire that burned between us, it was irresistible. I saw it in him, the same hunger, the same obsession mirrored in his eyes, the same thrill of forbidden desire that I felt coursing through my veins. One night, when the moon was high and the palace entirely silent, he pressed against me, daring, defiant, whispering in a voice that made my blood freeze and boil at once. "You can't control me. And you don't want to." I could not answer. Because he was right. I didn't want control, not fully. I wanted him, completely, dangerously, in ways that defied everything I had believed about duty, about desire, about power. And as I pressed close, feeling the tremor of his body against mine, I realized with terrifying clarity that we were no longer just thief and prince. We were something far more dangerous. Entangled, obsessed, addicted to the fire we created together. The line between punishment and pleasure, between dominance and surrender, had vanished entirely. Desire had claimed us both, and neither of us could escape it. I had always believed my life was ordered, disciplined, controlled. But with him, everything unraveled. And I knew, deep down, that there was no turning back. We were bound now, by fire, by desire, by the dangerous thrill of each other's presence. And the consequences, though unimaginable, did not matter. Because once the heart and body were caught, there was no release. Only obsession, only temptation, only the intoxicating, perilous edge of love and lust entwined. And I was falling, headlong, recklessly, without hope of restraint. The night was thick with tension, every corner of the palace holding the scent of candle wax and anticipation. I had grown accustomed to his audacity, his presence haunting my thoughts day and night, but tonight was different. There was an urgency in the way he moved, a fire in his eyes that matched my own. Desire, obsession, fear, they all coalesced into a single, undeniable truth. I could no longer deny what we had become. I found him waiting for me in the secluded wing of the palace, where the walls were lined with tapestries that muffled sound and hid us from prying eyes. His mask was off this time, revealing sharp features softened by the candlelight. There was a vulnerability there, subtle, almost fragile, yet it only made my pulse quicken. I wanted him fully, but the stakes had never been higher. If anyone discovered us, it would mean ruin. My crown, my family, the kingdom itself, all could collapse under the weight of scandal. "You came," he said softly, voice laced with both relief and challenge. "I should not be here," I said, though the words rang hollow even to my own ears. I stepped closer, eyes dark, lips pressed into a thin line. "And yet, I cannot stay away." He smiled, slow and knowing, and that smile sent a jolt of heat straight through me. "Neither can I," he admitted. "We are fools, both of us." I reached for him, our bodies colliding in a desperate, trembling embrace. Every moment apart had sharpened the need, the obsession that had grown between us over countless nights of stolen touches, whispered threats, and fiery encounters. My hands traced the lines of his shoulders, down his back, memorizing the feel of him as though it were a map I could never forget. "You are mine," I whispered, a growl of claim and desperation. "And yet, I am yours too, it seems." He pressed against me, forehead resting on mine, breath warm and ragged. "I never asked to belong," he said, voice low, confessional. "But I cannot resist." The fire between us ignited fully then, consuming every careful thought, every rigid discipline I had cultivated over the years. Our lips met in a kiss that was fierce, desperate, and tender all at once. It was a clash of wills, a surrender and a battle wrapped into one. His hands traced over me, daring, claiming, teasing, and I responded with equal fervor, gripping him as though holding on to both life and death. But even as desire consumed us, the world beyond these walls intruded in small, sharp ways. Every creak of the palace floors, every shadow cast by flickering candles reminded me of the danger we courted. The kingdom could not know. The court could not discover. And yet, the risk only made the moments more intoxicating, more urgent. "I do not care," I whispered, breaking the kiss to press my lips to his jaw, his throat, savoring the shiver that ran through him. "Tonight, nothing matters but us." He trembled under my touch, a mixture of fear and anticipation, desire and hesitation. "And tomorrow?" he asked softly, almost painfully. "Will it matter then?" I paused, fingers lingering on his skin, feeling the rapid pulse beneath. Tomorrow would matter. Tomorrow could destroy us. But tonight I could claim him, hold him, and let the forbidden world we had built flourish, even if only for hours. "Tonight," I said, voice low, heavy with command and longing, "you belong to me. Tomorrow, we will face whatever comes." The candlelight danced across his face, highlighting the sharp edges of his cheekbones, the curve of his lips, the fire in his eyes that matched mine. I pressed him against the wall, hands gripping his waist, hips, tracing the tension in his muscles. Every inch of him was alive, responsive, aching under my touch, and yet challenging me still, daring me to test limits I had never imagined. And then he spoke, voice trembling, soft, confessional, breaking through the haze of lust. "I have secrets," he admitted. "Things that could ruin you, ruin me. And yet, I want you. All of you." My breath caught. Secrets. I had suspected as much, knew there was more to him than the thief, more than the audacious smile and daring eyes. but hearing it spoken aloud, seeing the weight he carried, made me ache with both desire and protectiveness. "Whatever they are," I whispered, brushing a strand of hair from his face, "we face them together. You are not alone." He pressed against me then, no longer defiant, but vulnerable, letting the fire between us fuse with something deeper. His hands traced my chest, lingering over the fabric of my tunic, daring yet hesitant, and I felt the line between dominance and surrender blur entirely. Desire was no longer enough. Love, dangerous and forbidden, had claimed us. We moved together then, in a feverish, desperate embrace, each touch, each kiss, each whispered word a declaration and a surrender all at once. My lips pressed against his neck, his shoulder, tracing the lines of his body, memorizing him. His hands clung to me, daring, claiming, as if to anchor himself to this impossible, stolen moment. And in the midst of the fire, of desire, of obsession, we found something else. Confession, trust, the fragile bloom of love amidst danger. He began, voice trembling. "I've never felt anything like this. Not with anyone." "Nor I admitted, voice low, almost a whisper. "Not with anyone." The words hung in the air between us, heavier than any crown, any duty, any expectation. But the world intruded as it always does. The faintest sound, a distant footstep in the hallway, reminded us that our stolen paradise was temporary. I pressed him closer, hands firm, voice commanding. "No one must know. Not yet. We survive tonight, and then we face tomorrow." He nodded, lips brushing mine one last time. A promise, a surrender, a challenge. And in that kiss, I felt the weight of everything. Desire, love, obsession, risk. We were entwined now, body and soul, passion and vulnerability, and the consequences of discovery loomed like a shadow we could not escape. The hours passed in a haze of touch, whispered words, stolen kisses, and fevered confessions. I learned the curves of his body, the tremors of his desire, the depths of his vulnerabilities. He learned mine. The pull beneath my discipline, the ache beneath my cold exterior, the obsession that had grown beyond my control. By dawn, we lay together, tangled in each other's arms, exhausted and alive, knowing that the fire between us was no longer a spark, it was a blaze that could not be extinguished. And yet, the first light of morning brought clarity with it. The world beyond these walls would never forgive us, would never allow this love, this obsession, this dangerous union. I traced his jawline with my fingers, memorizing him again, and whispered, "Whatever comes, whatever they try to do, we survive. Together." He smiled, fragile, daring, defiant all at once. "Together," he repeated, and in his voice, I heard the echo of my own heartbeat, the confirmation of a love that was forbidden, dangerous, and all-consuming. And so, as the sun rose over the palace, bathing the chandeliers in light once more, we faced a choice: maintain our roles in a world that demanded order, duty, and appearances, or surrender to the fire between us, risking everything for a love that could destroy kingdoms. And I knew, with terrifying, thrilling certainty, that I would not let him go. Not now. Not ever.